If you are a Gemini rising, I know you have felt it coming. You are completely outgrowing the old story of who you are. In 2026, that story finally changes. This is an identity shift year. Let's talk about why. This is the 2026 full year forecast for Gemini Rising. In Astrofusion Lab, we read from the rising sign perspective because it shows how astrology lands in real life, through relationships, work, money decisions, and the internal response to all of it. And make sure you stick around until the end. I'm going to share a specific timing technique that will tell you exactly which part of this forecast matters most for your specific age. This is a collective forecast. Also, exact times can vary a bit by location and time zone, so use the dates as anchors. For Gemini Rising, 2026 is an identity shift year, a year where your worldview expands, your self-image clarifies, and the path forward starts to look different than it used to. You may feel pulled toward a new look, a new level of freedom, or a sudden desire to break out of boxes people have put you in. And you may also feel less patient with anything that keeps you feeling restricted. Old labels, outdated roles, or situations that don't let you move fast enough. This isn't necessarily a loud year, but it is a liberating one. It's about aligning your exterior with your interior and building a life that matches your real speed. One major bonus for 2026, Mars never goes retrograde this year. Unlike other years where energy stalls out, 2026 offers rare, uninterrupted momentum for your ambitions. As a Gemini rising, your chart ruler is Mercury. So Mercury sets the tone for how you move through 2026, your vitality, your mindset, and your ability to navigate chaos. In traditional astrology, Mercury is the messenger and the merchant. It's not just about thinking, it's about how you exchange with the world. So for Gemini rising, a big part of 2026 is asking, how are you editing your story? What message are you broadcasting? And this year, the 3 Mercury retrograde cycles act as specific turning points. Because Mercury rules you, these aren't just tech glitches, they are identity reviews. The first one runs from February 26th to March 20th in Pisces, which is a review of your career and reputation in the 10th house. Then from June 29th to July 23rd, Mercury is retrograde in Cancer, bringing a review of your finances and values in the 2nd house. And finally, from October 24th to November 13th, the retrograde in Scorpio asks you to review your daily routines and health in the 6th house. If you use Mercury well in 2026, the theme is simple. Don't be afraid to edit the persona you present to the world until it actually fits. The headline shift for Gemini rising in 2026 is Uranus entering your sign. On April 25th, Uranus leaves Taurus and enters Gemini. And for you, that's Uranus crossing into your 1st house, the place traditional astrology calls the helm. This is your body, your identity, your presence, and the way you steer your life. So this isn't a subtle transit. When Uranus hits the 1st house, it tends to feel personal and immediate. It's the part of the year where you start acting like yourself again, but it might be a newer, freer version of yourself than you're used to. Uranus in the 1st can show up as sudden shifts in direction, a change in image or self-presentation, breaking out of old roles, or realizing you've been living in a version of yourself that's too small. It can also bring restlessness, like you're allergic to anything that feels repetitive or dishonest. And because Gemini is a Mercury-ruled sign, this can feel like your whole operating system is updating. The way you think, the way you speak, the way you move through your day, and the choices you make without even realizing you're making them. There's also a moment later in the year that can amplify this Uranian energy. On July 4th, Mars conjoins Uranus in Gemini. This is fast, reactive energy. It can be a breakthrough window, great for bold changes and sharp pivots, but a quick warning. Because this is happening in your 1st house of the body, it is physically volatile. Watch your step and don't rush physically. If you feel that lightning bolt urge to burn it all down, that's your cue to direct the energy into a smart change instead of a messy one. So if 2026 has one big initiation for Gemini Rising, it's this: you're not meant to stay the same. You're meant to evolve in public, in real time, and in a way that actually feels like freedom. Now here's the quieter storyline running underneath all that identity change. Neptune enters Aries on January 26th, right at 0 degrees. Saturn follows on February 13th, and then they meet on February 20th, with Saturn conjunct Neptune at the very beginning of the sign. For Gemini Rising, Aries is your 11th house. Traditionally, this is called the place of good spirit, the realm of friends, allies, networks, patrons, and your long-range hopes. It's also where Jupiter rejoices, which is a beautiful reminder that support and opportunity often come through people, community, and shared vision. So, what happens when Saturn and Neptune move through good spirit? Neptune can dissolve the old dream. It can blur the edges of who you thought your people were or what you thought you were building toward. Saturn, on the other hand, asks for commitment, structure, and reality. So early 2026 can be a sorting period in your social world. Some connections deepen because they're real. Others fade because they were more about fantasy, convenience, or identity than actual alignment. Here's a dignity note that matters. Saturn is in fall in Aries, so the Saturn part can feel irritating at first. Aries wants fast movement and independence, while Saturn wants patience and responsibility. So you may feel less tolerant of group dynamics that waste time and more committed to building something with people who actually show up. If you want a simple way to work with this transit, treat your friendships and networks like a mirror. If something feels draining, confusing, or unstable, don't ignore it. And if something feels clean, consistent, and future-focused, invest there, because that's where the year starts supporting you. Now let's talk eclipses, because this is where the year tends to course correct you. First, the Aquarius and Leo eclipses. The solar eclipse in Aquarius happens on February 17th at 29 degrees, and the solar eclipse in Leo happens on August 12th at 20 degrees. For Gemini Rising, Aquarius is your 9th house. Big picture learning, beliefs, education, publishing, travel, and the way you make meaning out of life. Leo is your 3rd house, traditionally called the goddess, and it's where the moon has its joy. This is your daily life, communication, skills, siblings, and the patterns of your mind. So this axis is about how you think and what you believe. It can bring shifts in direction around study, teaching, writing, content, and the stories you live by. The 3rd and 9th houses also speak to local versus global. What's happening in your day-to-day world versus the bigger vision you're moving toward. Second, the Virgo and Pisces eclipses. The lunar eclipse in Virgo happens on March 3rd at 13 degrees, and the lunar eclipse in Pisces happens on August 28th at 5 degrees. For Gemini Rising, Virgo is your 4th house, home, family, roots, and emotional foundation. Pisces is your 10th house, career, reputation, public life, and visibility. So the second axis is very practical, home and career. You may feel pulled to realign your public direction, but it's connected to what's happening privately. If the foundation shifts, the career shifts. If the career grows, the home needs to support it. A quick timing note: eclipses are strongest near the exact dates, but you'll often feel the buildup and the aftershocks for weeks. On August 18th, 2026, the lunar nodes change signs. The North Node leaves Pisces and enters Aquarius, and the South Node leaves Virgo and enters Leo. For Gemini Rising, that lands across your 9th and 3rd houses. This is the same axis we just talked about with the Aquarius and Leo eclipses. So the second half of 2026 really reinforces a theme of mindset, learning, and direction. With the North Node in Aquarius, growth pulls you toward the bigger picture. Education, new perspectives, travel, publishing, teaching. and the beliefs that actually match who you are becoming. And with the South Node in Leo, there's a release happening around old ways of speaking or thinking, especially patterns that keep you stuck in the same conversations, the same drama, or the same mental loops. If you've been asking, what should I focus on? After mid-August, the answer gets clearer. Expand your mind, upgrade your worldview, and stop feeding the thoughts that keep you small. Pluto continues moving through Aquarius, and for Gemini Rising, that's your 9th house, the part of the chart tied to beliefs, truth, education, and the bigger narrative you live inside of. This is a long transit, so it's not just a one-year story. But in 2026, you can feel the direction. Your worldview is changing, and it's changing for real. Pluto in the 9th can look like going deep into study, questioning inherited beliefs, outgrowing old philosophies, or realizing you can't pretend you believe something just because it used to work. It can also show up as a desire to teach, publish, or share what you know, but from a place of depth, not performance. The point isn't to collect more information. The point is transformation through truth. By the end of this year, the way you see life, and the way you talk about it, starts to carry more weight. Jupiter is a supporting co-star in 2026, and for Gemini Rising, it speaks directly to money, stability, and the question people always ask: can I actually build something solid this year? A key timing anchor is June 30th, when Jupiter enters Leo. For Gemini Rising, Jupiter starts the year in Cancer, which is your 2nd house: money, income, possessions, and the way you build security. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, so this can be one of the more supportive currents in your year for stabilizing finances, growing resources, and making choices that help you feel safer and more resourced. And since Jupiter also rules your relationship sector, this transit suggests that in 2026, your most committed partnerships will stabilize when you feel financially secure. Love grows better this year when you aren't stressed about the bills. Right around this time, in mid-June, note that Chiron slips into your 12th house of the subconscious. This begins a longer story of healing hidden anxieties or self-undoing patterns. It's a quiet influence, but it asks you to be gentler with your mental health as you stabilize your material world. Then, once Jupiter enters Leo on June 30th, it moves into your 3rd house, traditionally called the goddess, where the moon has its joy. This is the place of skills, learning, writing, speaking, daily life, and communication. So, the 2nd half of the year is great for building your voice, expanding your message, learning new skills, or putting yourself out there more consistently. The pattern is simple. First, you build security, then you build momentum through your voice and your skills. If you've been wondering, is this going to get better? It usually does when you focus on what you can build steadily, one choice at a time. Late in the year, Venus goes retrograde, and for Gemini Rising, this is one of the clearest timing windows for love, work-life balance, and relationship dynamics showing up in the day-to-day. Venus stations retrograde on October 3rd at 8 degrees Scorpio, and then stations direct on November 13th at 23 degrees Libra. For Gemini Rising, this retrograde storyline moves across your 6th and 5th houses. Scorpio is your 6th house, traditionally called bad fortune. This is workload, obligations, stress, health maintenance, and the routines that keep your life running. Libra is your 5th house, traditionally called good fortune. This is where Venus rejoices. It covers romance, pleasure, creativity, joy, and what you do for the love of it. Here is a dignity note that matters. Venus in Scorpio is traditionally in detriment, so the retrograde phase can feel emotionally complicated. Desire can get tangled up with stress, control, or resentment. It's a good time to look at what's draining you and how your daily habits are shaping your relationships. Then when Venus turns direct in Libra, where Venus is in domicile, things usually get clearer and more balanced, especially around what you actually want and what feels fair. This can be a beautiful window to reconnect with pleasure, creativity, and romance, but in a cleaner way, without forcing it. So, for Gemini Rising, this isn't just love stuff. It's also a reset around daily life, asking what your routines are doing to your energy and whether you're making room for the parts of life that actually make you feel alive. Before we close, I want to add one timing technique from traditional astrology that makes the year feel much more personal: annual profections. Each year of life activates a house. That house becomes the main topic of the year, and its ruler becomes your Time Lord, the planet that helps tell the story of how the year unfolds. Profections are counted from your birthday to your next birthday, so your 2026 profection year starts on your birthday, not January 1st. For Gemini Rising, here is the profection map. Find your age on the chart on the screen to see which house is activated for you this year. How to use this. If your perfection house lines up with the loud themes in this forecast, especially the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 9th, or 10th houses, those topics tend to feel more personal, and the timing tends to show up much more clearly. To pull it all together, 2026 is a year where your identity and your direction get updated in real time. Late April starts a new chapter as Uranus enters Gemini and activates your first house, pushing you toward freedom, reinvention, and a more honest version of yourself. This energy peaks in July, so remember to use that window for breakthroughs rather than burnout. Early in the year, Saturn and Neptune in your 11th reshape your friendships and long-term goals, so you build the future with people who actually align. The eclipses and the node shift reinforce the 3rd and 9th house storyline: how you think, what you believe, and where you're headed. Jupiter supports you by strengthening resources early in the year and then expanding your skills and voice after June 30th. And Venus retrograde in the fall asks you to clean up routines and make room for real joy again. If you keep it simple, evolve on purpose, speak with clarity, and stop feeding the thoughts that keep you small. This has been your 2026 full year forecast for Gemini Rising from Astro Lab, where ancient astrology meets modern psychological insight. Each month, we'll come back to these themes and track how they unfold in real time.